All right, welcome back to Intro to Web 3223. We're going to be going over error checking today. So this is going to be a relatively short presentation, and there's not going to be a demonstration portion on this either. However, if you're an upward stage student here, there is definitely going to be an opportunity at least 3 or 4 times when I'm making software in front of you guys to go, hey, this is an opportunity for error checking to make sure that we're not sending data that is inappropriate or doing anything that is not necessarily what we're trying to accomplish, or it's going to blow something up. So with that said, this is going to be a relatively short presentation, and then this is also the last presentation of this course. So that's pretty exciting. All right, so what is error checking? First and foremost, error checking is the code that we essentially wrap our code in. And I know that doesn't make sense for you guys at the moment, but it is code to make sure that code is what we would call sanitary. And that basically comes down to, especially with your strongly typed languages, is if I am expecting a integer in a function, when I pass it into that function, it better be an integer. Okay, so generally speaking, if you're on the client and you're sending information to the server, you need to make sure that that is an integer. Okay, now, obviously, everything that comes off of the DOM is a string. So the reason why I picked that example is because it's a common one. So, and the way around that is to use a typecasting library that JavaScript already has built in to fix that problem. But again, if you're an Alfred Stage student, we're going to have a handful of scenarios where error checking is going to come up, and we can talk about it then. But for everyone that is on YouTube or watching this and didn't show up to class for some reason, you're going to have to look up how to error check on your own. Okay, so 2 types of errors. There's client mistakes. Okay, so this is when someone clicks on a button and they didn't mean to and they went to a different screen and then they want to go back. Okay, so one form of error checking is what would be called forgivability. And this is more of a UX term, but if you have software that allows people to quickly fix their own mistakes, that is generally a good thing. And you really want to make sure that your software has the ability to fix errors, because you do get into very hot water if you allow users to do something without being able to fix it. And this gets into crazy territory when we start talking about secure software. So like military stuff where you go, now, are you sure you want to do this? There is no reversing this if you do this. And we had that problem all the time in the Army. So and then we have programming mistakes. So just like in the last episode, if you were watching the presentation in the demo where I went out to that API and that API was down, there's a 500 error, a server error. Yeah, that's a problem. We need to account for that. So that's a state error. That's a programming mistake on their end, not mine, their end. But I still need to account for it because the people that are interacting with your software, they're going to attribute anything that doesn't work to the software. They're going to attribute it to you. So if I have, let's say I try to order something off of Amazon and it's a third party and the website for Amazon actually works, but the server on, say, Nordstrom doesn't work, people are going to blame Amazon. They're not going to blame Nordstrom. They're going to blame Amazon. Okay. So make sure that you have a little bit of error checking on that type of getting API data, right? And again, we'll show you that in class when we do the bigger example, not the one that I did on the last demo there, because we'll do a real project. That's when all this really comes up. Okay, rule of thumb: prevent errors before they happen. This is kind of an obvious one, okay? So if you can prevent the error before it happens, the user didn't even know that they made an error, right? And especially if you're guiding them in that direction. So the one example that I gave before is that I've made a scheduling app where you cannot click on more than one time, and that alleviates the problem of double booking for some reason. For and that person's not going to show up, and then you have other people that could have showed up and don't because that appointment slot was not open. So that is a way of error checking. Okay. Client errors. So these are typical client errors. You have inputs that are not filled in. So if you require an email address, make sure you actually check for that email address. Leaving unsaved data. Okay, this is more common on like desktop applications, or if you're leaving a game and it didn't auto save. Hey, do you actually want to save? Typically, that answer is yes. Okay. Accidental button presses. Okay, misunderstanding developer intent. So this comes down, the last bullet there is a little bit more abstracted and it's more of a UX problem, but that is something along the lines of conceptual models. Did we actually use the right heuristics to help users essentially interact with our software in a way that is efficient? And of course, this isn't always the goal. Most people in most scenarios are going to end up in the e-commerce space because that's where all the money is in web development. So the vast majority of the time, you're going to be talking about making something as easy as possible, and the buzz term is as frictionless as possible. Okay, so and yeah, business. Okay, technical errors. So these are the technical errors that you're generally going to fall into. You have your 400 errors, which is all your client responses. So 404, 403, okay, those are common, super, very, very common, 404 especially. We didn't find this file. Yeah, okay, let's go figure out why that was. Server error. Anything in the 500 range. So just like in the last demo that we had, I went out to the government weather API and it came back with 500 internal server errors. So not only is that not precise, it is kind of a catch-all. So something happened within their programming where it just doesn't work. It's broken. Okay, so someone's got some work to do here on a Tuesday, but yeah, we'll they'll figure it out eventually, but maybe we'll swing back during class and see if it works. Okay, not allowing the error to happen. Okay, we already talked about this a little bit. Gold standard doesn't frustrate the user, and then it offers a better user experience because there's nothing worse than hitting the submit button and then thinking that you're already done, and then it gags for a bit, and then it tells you that hey, by the way, you made this mistake. Okay. Okay, auto-populating data as much as possible. So this is more of a UX thing. Why force users to type out something if you don't have to? Browsers are getting pretty good about this, even though it's a bad security practice. But hey, here's all the emails that you've used in the past on input fields. Hey, here's all the saved passwords that you have. Right, and most people have one password for everything anyways, which is again bad security practice, but from a usability standpoint, this is a good thing. Okay. So here is an example of not allowing the error to happen in the first place. And it's the same example that I had from before. It's just I'm going to show you now. So we have a bunch of appointments here. We're going to go to appointments. We're going to, all right. We're going to, okay. It looks like we're altering this one. And notice that there's a big chunk of time missing once you scroll down. I mean, I see it. My previous self didn't see it. There it is. Okay. So we have a chunk of time that is available now. Okay. So notice that we don't have any time after 3 p.m. We're going to click one of these. Notice that I can oscillate between all of them, right? We can't select more than one time slot because that's going to be a double booking problem. All right. And apparently I didn't hit submit here, but if I hit submit, it would register that time was now taken, and then we wouldn't have 3 o'clock anymore. Okay, so here's that code example for being able to go through all the options for the times. All right, so now that I'm looking at this again, my future self is certainly better than my previous self, but option customer, option time. If anything was selected, we're going to remove the selected, and then whatever triggered the event, we're just going to add the class of selected to that thing. Okay, and then in the event that we removed the thing that was selected and it was already selected, we're just going to keep selected removed. Okay, a little bit confusing on the logic, and again, that's what I was talking about before. So we're going to play this one as well. This one is a little bit more common of a use case if you're talking about error checking, because we're going to go, okay, here's all the things that you actually need. All right, you need first name, you need last name, you need email, you need password. Username didn't show up, so that's a logic error for me. You definitely need username, but that was supposed to go to the server. So it's very easy to make those mistakes, but the general idea is still here. So now that we have all these things, now that I know that I have to fill them, I can go ahead and do so. Great. And look at that, we have a new profile. So that seems to work. All right. Here's the code example for that. So, or at least one code example. So we have check numbers here. So we're going to go through all those inputs, and then we are going to make sure that there's no characters in here. So this is regular expressions. There is an easier way to do this, and I'll show you that in class. But if you want to do it the, I guess I'll call it the senior developer way and not the inefficient JavaScript way, this is how you would do that. So, hey, let's find all the things that don't make any sense here. We don't want any type of letters. So anything lowercase letters, anything uppercase letters, we're going to add a global flag here. And then if we have any matches, so if this does not equal null, all right, then we're going to throw an error state, change error state, current error state, shows removed based on previous state, and then we're going to return error state. So basically we're saying, hey, this number thing is not a number. We got some letters in here. Okay, so that's going to throw an error. So this is error checking. All right. This is, the general pattern when you're, even if you're doing it the opposite way, where you're doing, we don't want any numbers, we just want letters. It'd be the same pattern. Make sure it's not empty first and foremost. Okay, so this is a required field. All right, and then if there is something in there, make sure there's no letters. Okay, hopefully that made sense. So here is a checking for technical errors example. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make let's play the video. We're going to make a appointment. And because we didn't re-render the DOM, that appointment is still going to be on the DOM. Okay, so we're going to create appointment. Appointment was made. Awesome. I'm going to scroll back up here and notice that 12:30 is still there. Everything's the same settings. So that appointment no longer exists. I'm going to hit this again. Slot was taken by another. All right. So there's a couple things that could happen here when you have web apps like this. If you have two people going for the same appointment at the same time, one of them is going to win. That's a race condition. The other one that can happen here is something like this, where, hey, I accidentally hit submit twice. The third option is if someone closed their phone under this state and then they reopened it hours later, the DOM's not going to re-render. This is going to stay the same. So they could still hit submit, but that appointment slot might not be there anymore. So it'd be within their best interest to refresh the DOM. More than likely, if this error comes up, what I would do in the future was re-render the DOM for them, or at least re-render the slots for them so they don't make that error twice. So there we go. Here's that little code example to see if that time slot was taken. And that's going to wrap it up for this one. So obviously we went through that pretty quick, and then we had a reasonable examples on how to implement these. The reason why this is so hard for people to pick up on, because every single error check is a proxy for what people are actually trying to do. So just like with the numbers example, hey, we're checking for numbers. Make sure that this is actually a valid field. So, okay, how do we actually make sure that's a valid field? Well, we're going to go the negative valid route. So we're going to check for letters, make sure there's no letters. And then if we get back letters in that input, then we know that there are at a minimum letters in there. And we also know at a minimum that it's not just numbers. So I mean, we're sanitizing by proxy for that one, and that's a pretty common pattern for that to happen. And the same thing with the other things that we're showing you on that app there, where nothing there is no dot check this for me, right? You're going to have to figure that out on your own. What are you going to base that on? And students have a hard time doing that, and it's part of the learning experience of programming, because it's not tutorial hell where tutorials are just going do this, do this, do this, do this. At some point you're going to have to turn the corner and go, I'm going to have to base this on this. I am going to make my own abstractions of reality. And hopefully we can get you guys to that point before you graduate. But we got to expose you early on so you have time to practice. So that's it. That is it for the curriculum. That is it for what I'm actually going to record here. If you're an Alpha State student, we'll be going over a little bit more. That type of stuff is not going to be graded. It is definitely falls under the camp of advanced front-end work, but exposure, especially for the students that want to go ahead and excel and try to be the best that they can possibly be in the time that they have. We're going to go over some of those concepts, but they're not going to be graded. So that's it. That's all I got. So if you are an Alfred State student, don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you found value in this. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.